Hi, I'm Mike Steven, and this is Gear Up. Today we're going to talk about mountain bikes and what you might want to think about when you start entering the market to purchase one. Some of the questions maybe you should ask, and maybe a little kind of guided tour through the mountain bike world. So, a lot of people, one of their primary concerns when they're purchasing a bike is price range. So I'm just going to go over some price ranges real quick and try to be as honest and truthful as I can about this. The truth is that if you're going to spend between say $600 and $1,000 on a mountain bike, you're going to get a decent bike that's going to handle basic trails, like your green circles, your blue squares, no problem. As you start getting closer to that 1,000, they can start pushing a little further. But these are bikes that are definitely meant to stay on the ground. They're definitely meant to not be super aggressive on. The other thing that can change maybe how much you spend on a bike is what I spoke about previously, your aggressiveness level and your weight. If you're a heavier rider, you're going to be harder on the bike. You're going to need a little bit better quality components to be able to stand up to a heavier weight. And if you have heavy weight plus aggression, again, you're probably looking at spending a little bit more money. So if you're kind of like a little bit more of a just want to cruise, want to get out, get some fresh air, pedal through some trails, some nice mellow trails, and you can totally get away with $600-700 and you'll be happy with the bike. So something like that would be this bike here. So what you'd get for that kind of value in your $600-700 price range is you're going to get base level Shimano componentry, meaning that your shifters and your brakes are all going to be kind of the first level that Shimano builds. Down here you have your front derailleur, rear derailleur, and disc brakes. So basically you're getting the entry level stuff that will stand up to mountain bike riding as long as it's, again, that mellower, smoother riding. You're into an alloy frame, so it makes it fairly light. It's still a decent bike that way. You're able to attach water bottle mounts onto them. One thing that the bike industry does that kind of annoys me personally is that they all come with really inexpensive, horrible pedals. You've only got 2 points of contact on a mountain bike. One is your hands, the second is your feet. If you run like a very basic demo pedal, I call them, the pedals that come with, whether you're on a basic bike or a super high-end bike, they all come with a basic demo pedal. Definitely worth the upgrade of getting a decent pedal with pins in it so your feet stay nice and stable on the bike. Because if your foot slips off, that's the first sign that you might be heading towards the ground. So you want to keep those contact points of your hands and your feet firmly on the bike. Something like this doesn't get lock-on grips, but the grips nowadays are pretty good. What I mean by lock-on, I'll show you on some of the other bikes, is they have a collar right here and it locks the grip on, so you can just unscrew that and slide the grip off. So as you move up in bikes, you're gonna get definitely some convenience and performance. You're gonna get some durability, you're gonna get all that kind of stuff. So as you move up the scale, your next zone would be full suspension mountain bikes. So to get into a decent full suspension mountain bike, you are going to spend in the ballpark of $2,400, $2,500, starting there. And those go up to absolutely insane prices. If you can imagine it, you can buy it. Bikes go up to $20,000, believe it or not, without a motor. So something like this guy, this is definitely a little bit nicer of the say that middle kind of category of bike. You're into a carbon frame here, so you've moved from alloy to carbon. Carbon's going to lighten the bike up a little bit. It's also going to make the bike ride a bit different. What I notice about carbon is it's a lot quieter out on the trails. All that tingy sounds that you can get with cables bouncing off frame and chain off frame and just all the little vibrations and bumps, you hear that with an aluminum frame. With carbon, it dampens a lot of that out and makes it quiet. So not only is it making it quiet to your ears, but it's making it quiet to the bike. So the bike is actually tracking a little bit smoother on the ground and a little bit quieter. What I mean when I say full suspension bike is that you have rear suspension. So you have a rear shock back here, and that's suspending the back wheel. You have a fork up here suspending the front wheel, so that as you go over top of bumps, the bike is going to comply over top of those and keep the tires on the ground. A lot of people tell me, well, oh, I don't need a full suspension bike. I'm not jumping or doing anything crazy. I reply to them, does your car have suspension? They're like, yeah. Well, you're not jumping your car, chances are. So the whole idea behind suspension isn't for jumping, is actually to make those wheels stick to the ground so that you can turn, that you can brake, that you can accelerate, that you can do all the things that a bike's tires and wheels are designed to do. The moment that your bike, your wheels are up in the air, you're losing control of the bicycle, or you don't have control of the bicycle. So suspension is designed for kind of two things. One is comfort, just to be able to, everything that comes up through the bike is being cushioned by the suspension before it hits your body, front and back. So wrist, shoulders, neck, lower back, all that kind of stuff. So if you want a little bit more comfortable ride out there in the trails, full suspension is a great option. The other part of it is performance. It has some performance features, meaning that if your tires are sticking to the ground better, you're going to be in more control of the bicycle, allowing you to either move faster or just be safer out there on the trails and able to corner better and brake better, all that kind of stuff. So moving on with this guy, you're going to start to get features like a dropper post. So this guy right here, I'm just pushing on the thumb there, the seat comes up. So the seat comes up to riding height, so you set it so that at max extension, it's your perfect riding height. When you get to the top of a climb, or you come to a stop sign, or you just come to a stop on the trail, or you're descending through technical terrain, you just push the lever, sit down on the seat, and it drops out of the way for you so that you can get back behind the seat of the bike to go down through steeper terrain. Or like I say, just as simple as stopping at a stoplight, it's nice to be able to push this button, have your butt on the seat and your feet flat on the ground. So in terms of components, what happens, like I said earlier, is your components are going to be more precise. So they move from like steel pressed components into alloy casted components. So when you cast the components, it makes them more precise. So your derailleurs, this doesn't have a front derailleur, but it does have a rear derailleur. The rear derailleur is just going to be that much more precise at hitting the gears. I may as well touch on that front derailleur thing. Your higher end bikes these days, as soon as you get above a certain level, you're going to notice they're going to be called one-by drivetrains, meaning one chainring up here, and then you've got all your gears in the back. If you notice how big this gear is back here, this is what's allowing this to work. You can run one chainring and then you have a whole bunch of different gearing here. So you get about the same amount of gearing that you'd have on your 2 and 3-by systems, but it's a lot lighter and a lot simpler, because all of a sudden now all you have to think about is this one makes the gears go up into an easier gear. You'll move slower, but you'll be able to climb steeper. The trigger moves you into harder gears that are harder to pedal, but you will move faster. As you move up in disc brakes, what happens with those guys is they get much more powerful. So there's definitely different levels of brakes, and as you move up in them, they're going to get lighter and more powerful. Meaning on big descents, if you're doing really big long descents, a higher end disc brake isn't going to fade, meaning the fluid in the line isn't going to boil as easy, and the caliper is going to maintain its strength and grip force on the disc, because as the fluid heats up on lower end brakes, you lose some braking power. You have to pump the brake a little bit to get it back up to braking power. Whereas with higher end ones, you can do those long sustained downhills where you're actually starting to really heat up the fluid in the caliper and heat up the disc and the pads and all that kind of stuff, and you'll have very consistent braking through all of that. Your suspension is another thing that will vary as you move up through the different levels. You're going to get more adjustments. there's two different phases on your suspension. There's the compression phase and the rebound phase. You'll have more adjustments on that rebound and that compression phase on your higher end suspensions, allowing you to dial that bike right into exactly what you want. If you don't know what you want, the bike community's got you covered, because pretty much every company out there now has, for example, Norco calls it ride aligned. And ride aligned means that it will tell you how much air pressure you should have in your rear shock, how many clicks of rebound, how many clicks of compression, how wide your handlebars should be, how high your stack height should be. It'll tell you tire pressure, what you should run for tire pressure. They ask you a few questions and it kind of aligns the bike to your riding style. So no longer do you have to buy the suspension, then research a whole bunch to figure out how to use it. You can just get that higher end suspension, type in some numbers, and you'll get some numbers back at you on how to set up the bike. Most of the time your bike shop will do that for you at time of bike purchase. But that's kind of going over suspension a little bit. Another big part of the bike is your wheels. So wheels are basically, as you move up into higher end wheels, they get a lot stronger. They can take more impacts. They're going to glide better. They're actually going to roll down the trail a little bit smoother, better quality bearings and better quality systems, especially in the rear of the bike. For the engagement will get a little bit more precise, and it'll glide better when the ratchets aren't grabbing a hold of the teeth quite as hard. The bike will glide a little bit nicer down the trail. And then you've got all your little odds and ends, like you'll move into a little bit nicer saddles. We talked about those lock-on grips. Those are those rings right there for the lock-on grips. And now there's all that to think about, but there's also, where are you riding and what type of riding do you like doing? If you say, man, I'm just kind of in your average trails, just zipping along, blue squares, maybe a little bit of black diamonds, but I'll take them kind of slow, then you're going to be into like a trail bike. Something like this is a trail bike, meaning that the amount of suspension that you have in the bike is going to be a little bit less than, say, an all-mountain bike or an enduro bike or a downhill bike. So as you move up in these different phases, the bike gets better at descending, but worse at ascending. So a smaller travel bike or a bike with a little bit less suspension will generally climb a little bit better than a bike with a lot of suspension. But vice versa, for the coming down, the downhill bike, man, it just coasts over all the bumps and stuff because it has lots of suspension, so it's gonna absorb. So you gotta figure out what type of riding you want to do. For our area here, a trail bike can handle most things that our trails will throw at them. The person that says, well, you know what, I like to do that riding through the trail stuff, but I tend to push a little bit faster. I might do the odd bike park day, which for people that aren't familiar with what bike parks are, is there we go, is bike parks are just like ski hills. Basically, you load your bike onto the lift just like you would skiing, and you come down the trails. So there's no pedaling up, lots of downhill runs, anywhere from green circles to black diamonds. A bike like this with a little bit more travel, still definitely a pedalable bike, a bike that can pedal quite well. I'd call this an all mountain to almost enduro type bike. And something like this guy, you can pedal up to the tops of all that kind of stuff and ride down, or you could take it to the resort the odd day for sure. The bikes that are going to be most happy at resorts are going to be enduro class bikes or downhill bikes. Those are the ones that just have lots of suspension and their primary focus is for going down. So we'll talk about this guy a little bit. You don't only get a little bit more travel. As you move into this style of bike, you're going to start to pick up things like chain guides right here. If you look underneath here, bash guard. Because you're riding more aggressively through more aggressive terrain, there's some things on your bike there that are trying to protect your bike. So this bash guard is protecting your chain and chain ring from being impacted. Your chain guide is protecting your chain from being thrown off through really rough sections. So again, that person that's maybe trail riding, not riding as aggressively, might not want those features added onto their bike and that extra weight. Whereas the person that is a little bit more aggressive might want that. You're going to notice that when you get into the more beefy bikes that are more all mountain to enduro, your tires are going to get a little bit wider and a little bit chunkier. Again, offering you a little bit better grip and traction and control on those techier, beefier, gnarlier trails. But you always lose on one end or the other. And so if they're wider and beefier, they're going to be slightly less efficient to pedal. So what I'm getting at here is that you've got to figure out the style of riding that you like to do and what suits your personality. If you're that person that's just like, man, I'll try anything, then you're going to want to go more towards your beefier, tougher, bigger travel stuff. If you're the type of person that says, no, man, I'm all about efficiency. I just want to see how far I can ride out there. I want to put on lots of kilometers and loops. You're probably going to go more towards an efficient design, which is more like a trail or a cross-country design of bike. Another thing to think about is how much you want to spend, because the truth of the matter is as you spend more money, you do get nicer features. But you've also got to figure out how much you want to spend. You've got lots of things that you probably want to do in the summertime. How much do you want to dedicate towards biking is a thing to think about. And the last piece of the equation, I would say, is take some time, go down to your local bike shop, talk to the people in the shop and get their take on your area's trails and get them to ask you questions or tell them what types of trails you're interested in riding and see what kind of bikes they put forth to you. So asking lots of questions and talking to knowledgeable people in bike shops will help you out tremendously with buying a bike, because there's a lot to know about them. Don't get overwhelmed by it because you can boil it down to quite as simple as where I want to ride, how much I want to spend is two of the very, very simple ways to boil it down. This is Gear Up. Thank you for watching. I'm Mike Stevens.